All right. Welcome to Jay's Safe Space. And y'all, I'm so excited to be having another conversation with y'all here. Here at Jay's Safe Space, we do what we do with the 50 Love Network, y'all. We have conversations that spark conversation, but here we continue that conversation. So this is my second Jay's Safe Space. And before I get into the episode or what I have prepared for y'all, I got to do a little housekeeping. So, we've got a couple logistical things going on with the 5011 Chronicles right now. We will be continuing our recording and getting back to our schedule as usual. But until then, I will be posting longer episodes of Jay's Safe Space to all of our outlets so that you all can stay connected with me and we can continue having conversations in the meantime. So I want to thank you so much for tuning into this. Um, I don't know if you all have been feeling this, and Dee and I have these conversations all the time where we speak on this level of energy where you feel it in like the stratosphere, you feel it all around. But there has been a lot going on for a lot of people. A lot of us individually have been feeling some different energies, and as I've gotten older, I've learned it's important to put specific language to what it is you're feeling, especially if it's something emotional. If you have the words for it, you can sometimes better deal with it. You can know how to better combat it. So for those who know me, I love me a good book. I love me a good self-help. I love a deep conversation. And I actually have a resource that I plan on using several times in Jay Safe Spaces. So this book is called Atlas of the Heart, and it is by Dr. Brene Brown. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I mean, the topics that she covers, the way that she covers them, the way that she breaks down the science behind them, and better understanding. It's essentially like a emotion dictionary, which is why it's called Atlas of the Heart. But it breaks down, I think, over 80 emotions and emotional experiences, some of which we wouldn't even consider to be emotional experiences. She breaks them down in a way that helps us not only better understand them, but better navigate them. And something that I've been feeling lately that I wanted to bring to the pod and talk about is I want to have a conversation about frustration and about apologies. And there's a couple stories that come with this. So the first is I've been dealing with some work drama. It's been ridiculous beyond ridiculous. And I work with the public and I work in an environment where the right leadership can affect the entire culture, and the wrong leadership can too. So we in our with our particular team, we've been dealing with a lot of inconsistencies, a lack of accountability, and it has been a very frustrating experience. And for me, I use the word frustrating intentionally, and that's where I pull out my handy dandy Atlas of the Heart. So listen to this, because she's got chapters that are broken down based off of places we go when we feel certain things. So for example, places we go when things don't go as planned, or places we go when we feel actually probably better if I just look and tell you what some of the other chapters are. But it's like places we go when things don't go as planned, places we go when it's beyond us, places we go when we compare. That's the one I was thinking of. But this one, the word frustrated is a place we go when things don't go as planned. And I find it really interesting how Brene Brown broke it down and distinguished it from similar feelings. So listen to this. Frustrated. Something that feels out of my control is preventing me from achieving my desired outcome. That's how it makes us feel. And something to note here, she says frustration sometimes overlaps with anger. Both anger and frustration can result when a desired outcome is blocked. The main difference is that with frustration, we don't think we can fix the situation, while with anger, we feel there's something we can do about it. And the particular situation that I'm dealing with, I don't know that there's much I can do about it besides pack my belongings and hitchhike. And again, this is a work situation, so I'm being facetious when I say pack my belongings and hitchhike. But I think it's important to understand that when we have a better understanding, because I could have just said I'm angry about the situation, but it's more than just anger, because I don't think that there's anything that I can do to fix it. But what's really interesting about where I work is I'm a strong believer that when you surround yourself with people who are different from you, who have different lived experiences, who maybe are a different age, I'm not a parent. I've got friends who are parents. So when you have those different backgrounds and you bring those different experiences to a shared space, you'd be surprised the amount of growth that can happen. You'd be surprised the number of aha moments. You'd be surprised how you can inspire, motivate, encourage each other. And one of my, I call her my work bestie, Hillary. That's also not her real name, but that's what I call her. Hillary and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about apologies essentially, and how sometimes when you have when you deal with people in your life, especially when we deal with family or we deal with friends we've had for an extended period of time, sometimes things are just understood. People just kind of insinuate that because I've known you this long, or because we're blood related, that I don't have to apologize for wronging you. And she said something. She's younger than I am by quite a few years, but she said something that was such a major aha moment for me that I have to share it with others. And I think it's something that totally deserves unpacking. What she said was, time is not an apology. Wow. Time is not an apology. And when she said it, I dropped what I had in my hands and I was like, you have to say that again, and I have to write it down, because that is more than just a mouthful. That is a life lesson right there. That's something that it takes people their entire lives to understand and to grasp. Time is not an apology. We hear the old adage, time will heal all wounds, and with time everything will be okay, and blah 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 blah. But that's not always true. There are people who go into their golden years dealing with things that were from their childhood that they never healed. And maybe it was they needed an apology. Maybe they need to apologize to themselves and create some forgiveness, some self-forgiveness for how situations and things played out in their life and how they held on to it. It's important to understand, and it's important to tie apologies and boundaries and frustration together, because they do kind of work hand in hand. Like with a particular situation I've dealt with at work, I was explaining my frustrations to a person higher in the hierarchy, and I was letting them know that for me, I was disappointed in how something played out. I was disappointed in their part of how a particular situation played out. And have you all ever heard this apology? I'm sorry that you feel that way. The non-apology apology, because it's not, I apologize for my actions. I'm sorry that you feel this way. Those are some of the biggest gaslighting statements if I've ever heard them. And that person did actually apologize and take accountability for their action. But I think we've all been in a place in our life where we've heard someone say, oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way, or I'm sorry for anything that I did. These blanket statements, these non-apology apologies, because when you've wronged me, when you've hurt me, when you've upset me and I vocalize that, or when you know you've wronged me and you choose not to apologize because, oh, we've known each other 15 years. Oh, that's my child. Oh, that's whomever. That's my partner. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it okay because of the relationship. What makes it okay is the apology. Like, that's actually what's going to make it okay. And I think about, for me, as I've gotten older, it has been important for me, again, to create boundaries, to put boundaries in place so that I can vocalize to somebody, hey, what you're doing is upsetting me. What you're doing is making me uncomfortable. What you're doing is not making this the best workplace for me, or the best living space for me, or is not adding anything positive to our relationship. It's not conducive for a growing relationship. Those are the types of things that as we progress, as we mature, we have to get better at vocalizing our boundaries. We have to get better at vocalizing our emotions, understanding what the things that we feel are, and learning how to say to people, this is how you're making me feel. This is what you're doing to me with your actions. Now, I have a story. I haven't told anybody this story, but this is how important apologies are to me. I'm a person who, when it comes to, if I feel I've wronged you, even if you don't feel I've wronged you, if I feel I've wronged you, if I feel that I've said something out of place, out of line, or done anything that could offend, I'm going to be one of the first people to come up and be like, I am so apologetic for how this played out, and I apologize for my role in it. So recently, I was reflecting, you know, I am proud to admit that I turned 30 last year, and I'm approaching 31 rather rapidly. I wish we could just, on the brakes a little bit. I'm so grateful for life. Don't want to start, I don't want anyone to think I'm ungrateful, because my life has been a miracle in numerous occasions. But, I turned 30 last year, and something about turning 30, if we want to get to the astrological side of things, it's the Saturn return. It's Saturn returning back to where it was when you were born, and issuing or bringing about, initiating, catalyzing this next phase of your life that is called adulthood, true, firm, 10 toes down adulthood. You can call it that. For some people, you can just call it getting older and having lived life and having this moment where you look around and realize there are ways that I could have shown up better in the world, and there are people that I owe apologies to. And so there are about 5 or 6 friends that I had in high school and middle school that I sent personalized messages to. But I began to reflect on those relationships and how important those relationships were to me growing up and preparing for college, and how important it was that I wanted to keep those people in my life, but also how I dropped the ball in continuing communication. Now, it was two-sided drop. It was, both parties in each of these relationships dropped communication. We all dropped the ball. And that was things that came up in some of those conversations. But for me, it was important. And I said something to the effect of, I want to apologize to you because I did not know how to be the friend that I know how to be now. Wasn't, and it wasn't so much that I wasn't equipped. I just hadn't lived long enough to understand true friendship. And for those of you who listened to our last episode of the 5011 Chronicles, Dee and I talked about the idea that when I was younger, my mom would always tell me, oh, you don't have friends. You don't have friends. But it was only because she was basically saying to me, you have yet to experience true friendship. So how can you really call this person your friend when y'all haven't experienced true friendship? And she was not wrong. She was not wrong. But what I learned from me was that the things that I know now, the arsenal of tactics and of the person that I am now, relationships that are important to me, I make sure that I do everything on my end to maintain them and to help them grow. And if I had tried a little more, who knows what those friendships could look like now? But it wasn't so much about regret as much as it was about reflection. I had reflected on how I had missed opportunities to be a better friend to people that I said were important to me. And it was important to me in my healing journey, in my progression, that I had a conversation with them about how it made me feel, our friendships falling apart, and me playing a role in that. And if it were 5 people I talked to, in 4 out of 5 cases, it went well. The 5th person didn't respond, and that is their prerogative. Like we've said before in previous episodes, I'm not responsible for how you experience me. I'm responsible for how I show up when it comes to you. I'm responsible for what I contribute to our conversations. So for me, it was incredibly important that I vocalized to these people. To me, it was incredibly important that I vocalized to these people, I could have done better. I could have shown up better. I could have been a better friend, and I wasn't. I apologize. So one thing that I've really worked at now is apologizing in the moment. Even though I'm a processor, and I've said this before in previous episodes of the podcast, but I'm a processor. I'm the kind of person who, when something happens or something occurs, I need a break. I need a beat. I need a beat to deal with what has just happened. I need a beat to emotionally work through the math of what just happened, so that when I show up correctly, and I show up only saying what I need to say. I don't show up emotional. I don't show up angry and speaking from an emotional place, because I know with me, when I speak from an emotional place, it can get unhinged. It can go to a place where I don't say any of what I actually wanted or needed to say. I say everything else. And that can lead to deterioration. That can lead to offense. That can lead to things that we never actually intended to do. So for me, processing is how I deal with those emotions. Taking a beat, looking at the definition of something to make sure that's what I feel. Why do I feel that way? Asking myself the follow-up questions before I show up at that person and say, why did you do this? Or me, I'm quick to be like, who are you talking to? So I'm glad that as I've gotten older, I've been able to kind of address that a little bit sooner, but also take the boundary of, or place the boundary of, I need to process this for a moment. There've actually been times I've had conversations with previous partners, friends, coworkers, employees, people who maybe reported to me where something has occurred, and I've had to say, give me just a little while. I need a short time to process that. I need just a beat. I need just a moment to process that so that I can return and have the best response to what has happened. So, I think that as we continue having conversations like this, I definitely want y'all to get into the comments. If you don't feel like getting in the comment or you want to say something a little more private, DM me. Let's have conversations about these emotional experiences. Let's talk about what, like that last episode, let's talk about what rejection is. Let's talk about frustrations. Let's talk about apologies. I want us to engage and to talk a little bit more about these things. Now, before I sign off for this episode, I do want to share another story, but just a quick, short one. There are times when, after processing, after working yourself through a situation, that at that moment you felt one particular way, one particular emotion with the person involved, with the situation, with whatever. And maybe in that initial confrontation or that initial conversation, you might have taken the position as the victim. I was in a previous relationship, and with the way that the relationship ended, we definitely had both brought insecurities and baggage to the relationship that led to the deterioration of it. But towards the end, I was pointing the finger quite a bit. Now, I'm not going to say that I was wrong in anything that I said, but I was wrong in taking this position as the accuser. You've done this and you've done that. And if you hadn't done this, then this wouldn't happen. And if you hadn't, I became that person. And the breakup got ugly. It was an uglyish breakup. And there was a month or 2 month space, I can't remember exactly how much time, before we had an additional conversation. And at that point, I'd been able to process fully everything that had occurred in our year-long relationship. I'd been able to process everything fully and see how I showed up throughout the relationship. Was I still upset about some things? A little bit, not as much, but I was able to take a lot more accountability in how I'd shown up in certain places and how things that I'd said or done, how they might have actually added fuel to the fire versus any sand or water, depending on what kind of fire it is. I'm a nerd, so excuse me. But we ended up having a conversation, and for me, it was important in that conversation to apologize. Even though my actions weren't the primary catalyst in the breakdown of the relationship, it didn't mean that I didn't have anything to apologize for. I showed up ugly in some senses. I was dismissive in others. So the thing about growth, the thing about maturing is that those difficult conversations, those uncomfortable moments, those uncomfortable reflections are the moments when we grow the most, are the moments when we see ourselves in the best light. Because once you do something that humbling, once you go back and say, yeah, I accept, I had to accept that apology from them, but I also had to be like, I showed up wrong. I did. I had my own issues, so I apologize as well, because I know that I could have shown up differently. I know that I could have handled things differently. So I think all that I really want to do in Jay's Safe Space is grow. I want this to be a thing about growth. So sometimes it'll look like moments of vulnerability. And for those who know me well, vulnerability is one of my favorite things to talk about. I don't think enough people talk about the true power in showing up with a certain level of vulnerability, whether that's a new job, new relationship, new living space, new city, whatever. Vulnerability is one of the greatest tools in our toolbox, and it connects directly to empathy. So I want to thank y'all so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope y'all did. And we're going to do it again. And I also want to throw a little teaser out there. I have already been working on some collaborative efforts. We got some people who are going to be showing up in here with me, and there are going to be some places I'm going and linking up with people to have additional conversations. So expect to hear about some of my latest obsessions in fashion and fragrance. Expect to hear about some of my favorite things I've been watching and how and why I obsess over them. And I also expect to be hearing about some wellness and some spirituality and ways that we can better align ourselves. So I thank you so much for tuning into Jay's Safe Space. Stay safe. Show up next week. We can do this thing again. I love you. Peace out.